Hey everybody, long time no see. Long time since we did a live stream over here. So I wanted to go through a few different topics because it is getting to be around that time of the winter where moves start happening. Wednesday is an especially important day. It's the non-tender deadline. So teams have until Wednesday to tender contracts to guys who are under control next year. And if they don't, those players become a free agent. And one of those guys is Gary Sanchez. Now, I want to take a look at Gary Sanchez's stats because Gary Sanchez is somebody we've got to talk about. Let me just pull up his stats for the last few years. Hopefully you can see these, and I'll go ahead and minimize myself. So, beginning in 2016, Gary Sanchez was on fire when he first came up. 299, 20 home runs, 42 RBIs, and just 229 plate appearances, just 201 at-bats. Absolutely phenomenal. Finished second in the Rookie of the Year voting, despite only playing in 53 games. 2017, more of the same. Played in 122 games. He did have some injuries, but he hit 278 with 33 home runs, 90 RBIs, 40 walks, 120 strikeouts, 876 OPS. He became an all-star for the first time, won the Silver Slugger for catchers, and finished 22nd in the MVP voting. Not huge, but, entering his age 25 season, you think the sky is the limit for Gary Sanchez. Well, he has a terrible year in his age 25 year. Hits 186 with 18 home runs, 53 RBIs. Defense still not great. 2019, he bounces back a little bit. Still only hits 232, but that OPS, that on-base plus slugging number, is 841. 118 OPS plus, so 18% better than the average hitter in the league, 34 homers. But then this year, of course, in the COVID-shortened season, he hits just an incredible 147. I mean, how is that even possible? He goes 23 for 156 with 64 strikeouts, so he struck out almost half the time. Walks just 18 times. Did have 10 home runs, so a little bit of power there. Still about a 30 home run season, but he just doesn't make enough contact. And the Yankees have a decision to make. He's due to earn probably $6 million next year. So the question is, do you pay him the $6 million and hope that he gets better? Or do you go after somebody else? They've been rumored and linked to James McCann. Now, James McCann spent the last 2 years with the Chicago White Sox. He's going to be 31 next year. Didn't have an especially great year, 289, 7 home runs, 15 RBIs. Actually, that was a pretty good year, 144 OPS plus. He didn't do so great in 2018. He had a 57 OPS plus. He hit just 220, but he got much better in 2019. 18 home runs, 60 RBIs, 273. He's a good defensive player, a good defensive catcher. He had a defensive wins above replacement of 1.3 in 2019. He was an all-star. So James McCann is somebody they've got to consider. Kyle Higashioka has looked good. I'm just wondering whether or not the Yankees are going to keep Sanchez, if they're going to even make an offer. You have to imagine that over the past few weeks, while the Yankees are kicking this around, they've been talking to other teams and trying to put together a deal. And if they can get a deal where they actually get something in return for Gary Sanchez, then they might go ahead and pull that trigger within the next 2 days. If not, you're going to just basically see the Yankees either tender him a contract and give him a shot next year, or they're going to cut him loose and he's going to be a free agent. So that's a storyline to watch over the next couple weeks. And I see everybody adding comments. It's tough to do these live because it's tough for me to comment as I'm going through my little spiel here. But I promise at the end of this, I will take some Q&A and do some talking to you guys. Is Francisco Lindor realistic? So this is something we've seen kind of kicked around this winter. Lindor is going to be a free agent after next season. So he's under control from the Indians, so he's still going to cost you a bunch to trade for, and then you'd have to re-sign him. The only reason you would consider this, there's actually a couple of reasons, but the main reason is that Gleyber Torres is not a good shortstop. I think Gleyber Torres is a fine offensive prospect. He had 38 home runs 2 years ago, had a bit of a down year this year. I'm not going to hold that against him. It was an off year. It was a weird season. He might be a guy that feeds off of the energy of the crowd. He had one bad slump. And in a shortened season, you're thinking, I've got to overperform a little bit to get my numbers to be where they should be, and you put a little pressure on yourself. And I think that's what happened with Gleyber Torres. But it's clear that offensive woes aside, he was just not good defensively. You either have range or you don't. His arm is not the problem. He's got a good arm. He doesn't have a ton of range, and he doesn't have a sense of urgency when he picks up the ball. He's kind of like a little bit like Miguel Andujar in that fact. And when he picks up the ball, he kind of pats, he takes a second, and a lot of times that can cause the faster runners to beat things out, or he might notice, as he's taking his time, that a guy is, a little further down the line than he has time to get it there for, so he'll rush the throw, he'll overthrow the first baseman or underthrow the first baseman, guy gets on base. So obviously, that's something that Gleyber Torres needs to work on. I think the Yankees would be more comfortable having him at second base. Now, that creates kind of a logjam because you want to re-sign DJ LeMahieu. He's your second baseman. He's the guy who's been so crucial to this team. Now, when he first came to the Yankees, the idea was that DJ LeMahieu would play kind of all over the diamond on any given day. And they still might do that. They might say to DJ LeMahieu, hey, we realize you're our best player, and we want to bring you back, but you're not going to start on opening day, right? You're going to start, 5 times a week or 6 times a week at different positions and let other guys kind of get in there and rotate. That's something that could happen. You could also sign DJ LeMahieu and shift him from second to first base. But if you do that, then what do you got to do with Luke Voit? Luke Voit led the major leagues in home runs this year. He had 22 home runs in something like 58 games or 59 games or something like that. Luke Voit was a beast for you this year. And I just don't see how you can justify trading him. There's my water. How you can justify dealing him, because he's so valuable. You don't pay anything for Luke Voit, and he gives you incredible value. So, I feel like if you bring back DJ LeMahieu, then he's probably going to play second base, which means you're going to give Gleyber Torres the shortstop position for one more year and say, hey, look, improve as much defensively as you can. And if you can't get it done, then next year maybe you sign Lindor and then you deal Luke Voit and then you shift DJ over to first base. But I don't think the Yankees are going to part with Gleyber Torres under any circumstances because he's a pretty good second baseman defensively, and he's an outstanding offensive prospect. Okay, so let's take a break here. Buttered Potato says, first of all, great name, Buttered Potato. Who didn't have some buttered potatoes this week? He says he wants she, I shouldn't assume your identity, wants Didi back. So do I. I love Didi, and I think Didi would actually be a fit. Here's the problem. Didi has earned the right to play every day. He played in 60 games this year for the Phillies. And if you bring him back, he's not going to be your starting shortstop. You got the same problem as if you get Lindor, right? You might as well go get Lindor if you're bringing in a shortstop, and Lindor's a better player than Didi. But I could see Didi agreeing to be that kind of utility role, right? You could even see the possibility that DJ LeMahieu shifts over to third base and Gio Urshela becomes that utility guy. Gio Urshela has played every position in the diamond, I believe, in his career. He's a guy who has no problems at third, obviously. I wouldn't necessarily put him at shortstop, but he probably can play shortstop the way they do defensive shifts. He's obviously got the strong arm. He makes plays from his backside all the time. So I feel like Didi could be an option, but I don't see it as realistic. Jesse Sanchez says, Liam Hendricks or Brad Hand for the bullpen in 2021. I really like the idea of Liam Hendricks. He's exactly the type of pitcher that the Yankees need. He's got that attitude, that swagger. He's got really good stuff. He's pitched in the postseason. He's been successful. So, he's somebody you have to consider. Brad Hand was a guy whose option, his $10 million option, was turned down by the Indians. So you got to figure he's going to earn less than 10. Any team in the league could have had him for $10 million basically. So he's probably going to make $7-8 million. We've seen salaries actually be lower than I thought. Charlie Morton, I thought he might get more than $15 million. I thought he might get more than a 1-year deal that he got from the Braves. So I think people are kind of overestimating how much some of these guys can get. But we'll see how it works out. But the num of it is Brian Cashman has options. He's got different ways that he can go. He's got the flexibility. He's a guy who likes to have a flexible roster. One thing that's worth mentioning is the Yankees are a bit too right-handed. I have to assume that they're going to give the left field job to Clint Frazier, right? Last year it was basically Gardner most of the time until Frazier took it over. But adding Clint Frazier, who very much deserves to be the starting left fielder, that makes your lineup even more right-handed. Aaron Hicks can switch hit. He's in center field. But aside from that, it's basically Tyler Wade. Who else do you have that can hit left-handed? The Yankees definitely, you have Mike Tauchman, but he can't hit. He barely played last year. So I feel like the Yankees need to balance out that lineup. If you look at any great championship team, they always had a big-time left-handed hitter. If you look at the 90s dynasty, Bernie Williams was a switch hitter, but he was deadly from the left side. You also had Tino Martinez, who was deadly from the left side. Go back to the 70s. Obviously, you had Reggie Jackson. Back in the 60s, it was Mano and it was Maris. Yankee Stadium is built for left-handed hitters. It's got that short porch for a reason. I'm telling you, as a person who has played baseball, I would much rather be taking aim at, even 385 in right center as opposed to 399 in left center. And in right center, we know that, or right field, we know that it comes down as short as 314. And now in left field, it is 318 down the line, but it juts out a lot quicker. If you look at an overhead map of Yankee Stadium, it's just disproportionately deep in left field. If the Yankees are trying to be a home run hitting team, right, then you have to get left-handed hitters. Also, nobody on the Yankees can hit a freaking slider from a right-handed pitcher. Having a couple of deadly left-handed hitters, and that's where I come back to Didi. Didi was great at this. He offset those righties. Having a lefty that can kind of mix things up and give that pitcher a different look and be dangerous, that's big, and that's not something that should be looked down on. Casella says Greg Bird. I don't know if that was because he was in the sidebar or whatever, but Greg Bird has signed with the Phillies. Greg Bird can't hit anyway. There's no reason ever to have Greg Bird on this team. Let's see. Ethan Tyndall says Yankees should sign Joe DiMaggio, Babe Ruth, Willie Mays, and Mike Trout. I agree. Let's get those guys. Ethan's got a good channel, by the way. He wanted to collaborate. Ethan, we will collaborate at some point, but let's get you up to 500 first. Let's get some subscribers over to Ethan. Chuck Silver says, would you trade for Max Scherzer? Would I trade for Max Scherzer? Really depends on, what you'd have to give up. Max Scherzer is obviously a guy that would make a huge impact on the rotation. He's reasonably priced. When he signed, he was one of the most expensive pitchers in baseball, but the way salaries have gone up, his $22, $23 million salary, maybe it's 25. I don't know off the top of my head, but it's pretty reasonable these days, but you'd have to give up something to get him because the Nationals are still trying to win. Wicked 50 Cal, he says, I want Tommy La Stella. Yeah, I like Tommy La Stella too. He's a lefty. He can play all over the infield. He's a contact hitter. He takes pitches. He works the count. He's played in big games before. I tell you who else I like. I like Cesar Hernandez. He's a switch hitter. He's got a little bit of pop, but he's a good defensive player, can play all over the infield. I think it's really important that the Yankees get a left-handed bat. Let's see. Somebody else said, okay, Be Cool, B Duff 1 says, would you trade for Blake Snell? I'll tell you this right now. The Rays are not going to trade Blake Snell to the Yankees because they're rivals. The Rays will try and trade Blake Snell to the National League or to a team that maybe is on the cusp of winning, but not one that could ultimately come back and bite them, right? They're not going to trade Blake Snell to the Dodgers. They're not going to trade Blake Snell to the Yankees or the Red Sox. If I were the Rays, I would try and trade Blake Snell to a team like the Padres, a team like maybe the Cubs, a team that maybe is on the brink but not realistically going to get to the World Series, but a team that could get a little deeper into the playoffs by having a Blake Snell. All right. Trade Miggy and Monty for Snell. Not going to happen. Let's see. Jesse Sanchez says Molina to the Yankees. So that's a name that we've seen tossed around, right? Yadier Molina is one of the best defensive players in baseball, best defensive catchers in baseball. He's got a gun. He's great at framing pitches. He's a veteran. He's durable. Problem is that he's 38 years old. He clogs up the bases. He wants a 2-year contract. I just don't see it. It's possible. It's possible, but I think he stays in St. Louis. Is there any chance that Judge has a chance to improve or reach his ceiling? I think Judge is only going to get better, but he needs to stay on the field. If you look at what Aaron Judge did at the beginning of last year, before he got hurt, he had he was leading the league in wins above replacement by quite a bit when he got injured. He had 9 home runs. He was leading the league. The problem is that Aaron Judge gets hurt every single season. And I don't know if it's a body type thing. I don't know if it's a problem with him speaking up about nagging injuries that become worse, or if he's just not getting the right training and conditioning. One thing we saw is that after everybody came back from injuries last year, everybody stayed healthy for the most part. And you played pretty much every day through the first 2 rounds. You played the 2 wild card games, then you had a day off, maybe 2 days off, and then you had the 5 days against the Rays. So the fact that these guys played, down the stretch, they played most days, and then they played 7 out of 9 days or whatever during the postseason and didn't get hurt, and that was a promising sign. And everything that I've heard about Giancarlo Stanton is that he's losing even more weight. He lost 10 or 20 pounds over the quarantine last year, and apparently he's trying to slim down another 10 to 15 pounds this winter and get more flexible. So that's going to help Stanton. As for Judge, I just don't know. I hope so. Dominic Comer says, Real Muto, where? JT Real Muto is another great catcher who's a free agent. I think he ends up back with the Phillies. He's a good player. The Phillies are on the cusp. The Phillies have a lot of money to spend. They have that rich owner. That's why they signed Bryce Harper to that 13-year contract, because they're making a commitment to winning. And having a catcher is such an important part to your team. Having a catcher who's a real difference maker. And JT Realmuto is one of those guys. Grayson says, making sausages and watching the live stream. Yeah, so I haven't done a whole lot of live streams lately. I've been working on different formats. If you guys have been following along all winter, you notice that I've done a few different formats. This is a new format. I built this reel of Yankees highlights that you're seeing on the screen. I built like a 20-minute reel. It's going to play on loop. But I'm building that out, and next season I'm going to include another reel for every highlight from every game. I launched a new podcast with my buddy Tom where it's going to be all about pitching, and we're going to talk pitching all year. We're going to highlight any Yankees rookies who come up and pitch. We're going to break down in a very analytical and very mechanical way their appearances. We'll also do other games. If you got a matchup of Clayton Kershaw versus some other, who I don't know. I can't think of 2 pitchers off the top of my head. But if if you got a really good pitching matchup, we'll get on there and we'll break it down. So I built that podcast out. I'm also going to announce this right now. I'm doing a separate podcast with Patrick Hennessy from Unhinged. He's joined the podcast a few times. And we're going to launch a solo podcast, an independent podcast that will be hosted on my channel. And it's going to be called the 643 DP podcast. So that's a little double entendre, 643 double play, and 643 is the pitcher's best friend, and also DP, Derek and Patrick. So we're working on that. And hopefully, once the Yankees make a big move this winter, we're going to get on and work on that. So, let's see. So, PXNA says, Philly said they don't have the money, search it up. So I haven't actually done my research into that. So if that's the case, then I'm wrong. But, I just think Real Muto would be a great fit to go back. If Real Muto is willing to come to the Yankees, he would be a nice addition. But, like I said, Brian Cashman has a lot of money to play with this winter. He's got at least 70 to 80 million bucks. So we'll see how it works out. How many years do you think DJ will get? I say 4 years, 85 million. Tim, I don't think you're that far off. I think about 4 years, 82 to 83 million, maybe a little bit more because you're convincing him to take 4. But I do think they'll include a 5th-year option for him. But I don't think it'll be an option where it's independent on the Yankees or on DJ LeMahieu to decide. I think they'll leave it up to performance, and they'll have what's called a vesting option. A vesting option is an option that kicks in when you hit certain goals. So let's say if DJ LeMahieu plays in 145 games or gets 185 hits, something like that, the option can vest. You saw that this year with J Happ. J Happ had to appear in a certain number of games for his contract to vest, and he failed to do that, so he became a free agent. Let's see. Thoughts on the Mets being real competitors for free agents, giving the Yankees competition. Jeremy brings up a really good point. And Jeremy, you get the... I haven't done the any sound effects yet. Jeremy, that's a real good point because the Mets need a second baseman. Robinson Cano is out for the season because he tested positive for steroids for a second time. So he's suspended for all of 2021. The Mets also have a new owner. If you recall, the Mets have had a lot of financial issues dating back to the Bernie Madoff scandal from a few years ago, which was kind of it was like a pyramid scheme, and a lot of people had their investments, including the Mets owners, tied up in these accounts that were fake. And it was basically all gone. Basically, they lost all their money, so they had to sell a portion of the team. I know that Bill Maher, the comedian and political commentator on HBO, bought a portion of them. I think Jerry Seinfeld even bought a portion of the Mets. So what they had to do was, sell the team ultimately. And this new guy, I forget his name. I think it's Ray Cohen. I could be wrong on that. I might have a different name in mind. It's pretty late in the evening, long day. But this guy's really rich. I mean, he's billions, not millions, rich. And he's a guy who's made it clear he wants to win in the next 5 to 7 years. The Mets have been linked to Trevor Bauer. Trevor Bauer has actually written on Twitter that he's, enthusiastic about the Mets' new owner. Now, maybe he's just saying that because the Mets' new owner is rich and he's a free agent and he's sucking up a little bit. But, the Mets have made it clear they want to win, so they will be a real competition. And speaking of Trevor Bauer, I haven't gotten into him yet. I got into a bit of a debate earlier with somebody on whether or not Steve Cohen, thank you. I got into a debate early on whether or not, and I'm going to answer Chandler's question in just a second, whether or not Trevor Bauer is an ace-type pitcher, and I think he is. If you look at his numbers from 2015 to 2017, they're not amazing, but in 2017 he started working with driveline baseball, started learning how to put spin on the ball. He now has pretty much the top spin rate. He's in the 100th percentile of spin rate. In fact, let's go to Baseball Savant, which is a stat-based channel. It's a website that shows you, and I'm gonna put this on here. Safari screen. Let's look up Bauer. Trevor Bauer. What it does is it shows where he ranks in relevance to the rest of the league in certain areas. So what it'll do is it'll have a little graph here, and you can see that in the Major League percentile, he's got in the 100th percentile of fastball spin, even though he's got it, in the 23rd percentile of velocity. He's 94, so like that. It spins more than anybody. And we all know that spin rate is all the rage in baseball these days. He also is in the 80th percentile of walk rate, meaning he throws strikes. 95th percentile of strikeouts. 97th percentile of expected batting average. And 99th percentile of expected ERA. 75th percentile of whiff or swings and misses. And his curveball is in the 92nd percentile. So Trevor Bauer is a guy who's got legitimately ace-level stuff. Now, you will notice there are some downsides. He does give up, he's about middle of the road in exit velocity and hard hit. So those are areas where he can improve. And, barrel percentage, the amount of times that guys barrel up the ball, he's in the 59th percentile. So above average, but still room for improvement. And he only wants a 1-year deal, according to, some of the things he said in the past. So if the Yankees can get him, I think they should go after him. Let's take a look at Domingo Germán. I don't know if they're going to have his numbers from this year, or from 2 years ago, because he didn't pitch this year. But I'm just curious, because I was looking at that curveball percentage. Okay, so 2019. So we were just looking at Trevor Bauer, and we know that Domingo Germán has a dynamite curveball. Well, he's only in the 66th percentile, and Trevor Bauer's in the 92nd percentile. So 30% better, basically. That's how good Trevor Bauer is. Fastball spin, he's in the 86th percentile. So Bauer would be better there, too. So, as much as everybody loves Germán and his ace-level stuff, Bauer is much better. No surprise. All right, let's answer some questions here. I'm going to do about 5 minutes of this, and then I'm going to call it a night. And we should do... Who thinks I should do this regularly? I've been debating whether or not I want to do more live streams. Mateo Marano says, do you think the Yankees can trade Stanton for Harper? No, I do not. Although, if that was a move that was available to the Yankees, I would jump on it. But I don't think Stanton's going to get traded because, one, he's got this humongous contract that nobody wants to take on, especially when he's injured all the time. And two, he can't really play the outfield anymore, so your options are only to trade him to teams that can afford to take a big contract for a DH. And the third reason is he's got a no-trade clause, so he would only go wherever he wants to go. Adrian Acevedo asks a great question. What are your thoughts on Estevan Florial? Do you think he'll go back to his 2017 form and have a huge impact on the Yankees at some point in the next few years? Look, he's a left-handed bat, and I've actually been really impressed by his swing. He's another guy, though, that has had nonstop injury problems. His injury problems have ranged from a broken wrist to, I think he had an oblique injury a couple years ago. So he's a guy, he's muscle-bound, he's kind of big and strong, but there's no question about his swing. He actually reminds me very, very much defensively when I watch him run of Bernie Williams. He's got that natural runner stride. If you remember, Bernie Williams was a sprinter. He wasn't in the Olympics or anything, but he was, basically a medal-placing sprinter for Puerto Rico in some competition when the Yankees signed him. And when they signed him, he was very skinny and he was very raw, but he had that great speed. And everybody could tell that he was going to be a great athlete just by the way he ran. And when I see Florial, I see the same thing. And Florial has a tremendous arm. He's got a left-handed swing. He's got just a really good bat. The question is, can he get healthy? And where will he play this year? I think he'll probably start in AAA if there is a AAA. And then I think he'll be up in the big leagues as soon as somebody gets hurt. We saw him this year. We saw him make a debut and get a base hit. So I like Florial. Pablo says, what is your opinion on Gio Urshela? I think he's the best third baseman in the league, except for possibly Matt Chapman. And I feel like the Yankees should keep him. Futai says, Clark Schmidt mechanics look a lot better now. I actually haven't seen him pitch since he came up this year. I don't know if he's playing winter ball or whatever. I haven't really seen anything on Clark Schmidt. If that's true, then we'll see. But when he came up, he couldn't throw strikes. When he came up during the intra-squad games, Clark Schmidt looked tremendous. His delivery was nice and compact. But then he went down to the alternate site. And when he came back to make his first start and to pitch in relief, his mechanics were out of whack again. I talked about this and I showed it off on one of the other videos. Let me grab a baseball. This is my no-hitter baseball from 2008. So when he's in his windup, he gets nice and compact and he strides forward. But as he's striding forward, he violently throws this left elbow to the left towards first base. And what that does is it naturally pulls your arm. It's tough for me to extend because it's cut off. It pulls your arm down and off to the side, and it puts strain on that elbow, right? So what he's got to learn to do, and what he was doing very well during the intra-squad games, remember those summer camp games, is when he was striding, he was tucking the elbow. That's what they teach you. When you stride forward, tuck the elbow and throw over that front side. You're supposed to basically go watch Mike Messina. Mike Messina, Greg Maddux, these are guys who had amazing mechanics. That's why they were able to pitch for so long. They didn't put as much strain on that elbow because they drove down the mound and they went over that front side. Same with Mariano Rivera. He tucked that front side into his rib cage. Now, some guys get away with really opening up. But usually it's guys who are sidearm slingers and you're not putting as much pressure because you're kind of at a lower angle. So, I like to see guys that really tuck that front side, and right now Clark Schmidt doesn't do it. What do you think the Yankees infield is going to look like in 2021, and who do you think they're going to sign and re-sign? So I think it's going to look pretty much the same as it did last year, to be honest with you. I think it's going to be I think Kyle Higashioka is going to be their starting catcher, or McCann possibly. I don't see them getting Real Muto, and I don't think Sanchez. To me, Sanchez just seems lost. I think they're going to move him on or non-tender him. First base, I think you're going to see Luke Voit back, and I think you're going to see late in the games DJ LeMahieu switch over to first base from second base. I think your second baseman is obviously going to be LeMahieu. I think Gleyber Torres is going to be your shortstop until about the seventh inning. Then he's going to slide over to second base, and Tyler Wade or somebody like a Tommy La Stella, that's where I would put him, would come in and play the last few innings. Now, whether or not he would accept a role in such limited capacity, I don't know. Third base is going to be Gio Urshela. Left field is going to be Clint Frazier. They might bring back Brett Gardner. Brett Gardner wants to play in front of fans. There will be fans next year. I think the Yankees are going to do it. He's just a fan favorite. I wouldn't do it. He looked done to me. Center field is going to be Aaron Hicks. and then right field will be Aaron Judge, and your DH is going to be Giancarlo Stanton. I think that's what we're looking for. If I'm the Yankees, though, and you have this money to spend, that means you've got to put the money somewhere. That means Trevor Bauer, and that's why I'm not ruling the Yankees out for Trevor Bauer. There have been times where you didn't think it would be a fit, and the Yankees have surprised you by making the big move. If you go back to 2008, the winter of 2008, the Yankees right away signed Nick Swisher, and the thought was he was going to be your first baseman, and he could play in right field. But then in December, they signed A.J. Burnett and CeCe Sabathia on the same day, and they had this humongous press conference, and you're thinking, okay, they've done their big move for the winter. Now it's just going to be, locking up little guys, improving in the margins, things like that. But then on December 22nd, I still remember this, I was painting my house, and it was a new house, I just bought it, and I went out to the car to drive back to my apartment, and I turned on MLB Network radio. And on the little screen, it said, Yankees signed Teixeira, 8 years, $180 million. And I lost it because it was surprising. Teixeira had been linked to the Orioles. He had been linked to the Red Sox. But the Yankees jumped in there at the last second, and they got him, and they won a World Series. The Yankees might be playing the waiting game with Bauer, seeing what teams have to spend, seeing what kind of money they have available. Because everybody's gonna be a little bit tight on money this year. And teams are going to want to allocate those funds and know what their budgets are before a season that could be in jeopardy. And it might behoove the Yankees to kind of wait for some of these funds to dry up and then see if Bauer will give you a 1-year, $31 million deal. Let him take over the number 2 spot, ease Severino back into the rotation, go with Garcia or Herman or Montgomery and fill out the rotation. But that rotation in the playoffs of Garrett Cole, Trevor Bauer, Luis Severino, and then whoever. I love it. Also, I think the Yankees need to look at getting some fresher bullpen arms. I do like Jonathan Loaisiga, Johnny Lasagna. It's impossible for me to say Jonathan Loaisiga without going, Johnny Lasagna. Jack, I see your comment here. Jack, you're going to have to start. I'm not going to go back and talk about Lindor again, but go back and watch the whole video when we're done here. But KP Yank says winter meetings canceled. Is that new? Is that confirmed? I had not seen that, but it does not surprise me. But anyway, I'm just, I feel like the Yankees are going to have a little bit of money to spend. I don't see them re-signing James Paxton just because he's too injury prone. Paxton has Scott Boras as an agent, so he's going to run up the price. I feel like Trevor Bauer is the perfect fit. If you can get him for 1 year especially, because then you've got Severino coming back the next year. You've got Herman developing and becoming that top of the rotation type pitcher like I think he will. Jordan Montgomery had the lowest fielding independent pitching on the staff last year. Lowest exit velocity against on the staff. I think in the league, some of the best swing and miss stuff in the league, even though his ERA was 5.11. He's a guy that can be a legitimate starter in the big leagues. But if you get Bauer for 1 year, you're pretty much guaranteeing a championship. All right, so let's see. One more. I'll take one more question. I'm looking for a good one here. Let's see a good one. Here's a good one. Thoughts on that Japanese pitcher Tomoyuki Sugano that the Yankees are interested in? Now, that's a good point. I really like these foreign pitchers because a lot of times they bring a little bit of a different look, whether it's a hesitation in the windup, like Hiroki Kuroda or Masahiro Tanaka. He really drops and drives. Some guys throw the shuto. The split finger is a pitch that's thrown a lot in Japan, and the split finger is one of the most effective pitches in Major League Baseball. But the problem is that coaches in America think that the split finger is bad for your elbow, when really it's not that bad for your elbow. Certainly no worse than throwing any other breaking pitch. But they throw it a lot in Japan. They also throw a lot more in Japan. They throw several times a week. They do long toss every day. And I watched Sugano pitch. He's not a guy who throws extremely hard from what it looked like. He looked like he was about a 94, 95 guy. But it looked like he had a lot of great command and a really good slider. All right, so that's it for this live stream. I will be back at some point over the next few weeks to do another live stream. Anytime the Yankees do a video, I will hop on here and do a quick announcement and things like that. As always, please like and subscribe if you're new. I appreciate everybody joining. Shout out to all my regulars. Shout out to Ethan Tyndall. Go check out his channel. Shout out to Jack Arnold. Shout out to THG Wicked Cow. Obviously, these guys have been with the channel a long time. We're over 5,000 now. So appreciate it, everybody. Good night.